Hi everyone, Cynthia here, and today I'm really excited to bring you the instructions for how to modify this adorable courtside dress to make it maxi length. I think you'll be really happy to see that it's a pretty simple process. There are just a few things that you need to keep in mind. Today I'm accompanied by Bluebell, my little sewing buddy over here. She's going to keep us company while we take some measurements. To get started, you'll need a few things. You'll need your courtside dress that you've already completed, or even a muslin or practice version of the dress. You'll want to have this dress to know where exactly the skirt hits you, because that is what you'll need in order to determine how much length exactly to add. You could guess at it and you could do a little extra and cut it off at the end if you don't need it, but you definitely don't want to end up with a dress that's too short. I also highly encourage everybody to make a practice courtside in the short length before committing to doing a maxi length. It's pretty normal for people to make fit adjustments. I make a number of fit adjustments on all my garments. So you'll want to get those straightened out before you cut out the entire maxi skirt. So start with your dress. You'll also want a pair of shoes that you'll be wearing with your maxi length courtside, and I have my heels sitting right over here. You'll want a washable marker, and you'll want a measuring tape. You'll also want a pencil and paper or pen and paper to write some notes on. Let's get started. So first we'll get on our shoes, and when I wear my maxi length dress, I'll be wearing these heels, which I don't wear with my short dress because I feel like I'm going clubbing, which I don't do. Once we have the heels on, then we can start taking our measurements. You want to know exactly where the dress hits you, and if you're taking your own measurements, you'll want to find the length of the dress as you're standing up straight. So you don't want to bend down and mark where the dress hits you. That'll make it seem longer than it is. So what you want to do is stand up nice and tall and find that spot with your finger. So I'm holding onto that spot right here, and then get your washable marker and mark that spot with the marker on your leg. Then take your measuring tape, hold on to the end that says 0, and then take the other end and you can put it under your shoe. And then slide it until it comes up to the point that you marked on your leg. So, okay. All right, there we go. So, once you do that, you'll know the length of your skirt down to the floor. So my skirt down to the floor is 28 inches. You can write that down on your paper. What I want is a maxi length dress that when I stand straight, it falls 1 inch above the floor. If my measuring tape goes 28 inches to the floor and I use a 1 inch hem allowance, and it will land 1 inch above the floor, which is what I want. So I'm gonna mark down 28 inches that I need to add to this skirt length in order to get that length of a maxi dress. The other thing you also wanna make sure you know or remember is what length skirt that you cut. So this is the shorter length courtside dress, and I wanna keep that in mind when I add onto my skirt. Once you've written down that measurement, go ahead and take these off. You don't need those anymore. You need one more measurement. What you want to know is how far down the widest area of your hip or low hip measurement is from this seam right here, which is the center front top of the skirt. So I do have my courtside shorts on underneath. It's a little easier to see. So for me, it's right about here. You can see like that's where the roundest part of my booty is and the thickest part of my thighs. That's gonna be my largest measurement. And I wanna know how far down that is. And for me, it's about 8.5 inches. So get that measurement and write it down. You also wanna know what your low hip measurement is. So you can go ahead and take that now at this point and write down that number as well. So now that we've taken our measurements and taken our notes, we're ready to move on to the fabric. To make your courtside maxi length dress, you'll need 3 to 4 yards of fabric. All right, let's get started. We're over at our fabric, And right here at the top of your screen, I have the fabric folded in half. So this is the fold on the top of your screen. And down here on the bottom of your screen are the selvages. So we have 2 selvages, and I have the fabric folded with right sides together so that you can see more easily. By the way, isn't this adorable fabric? This is Olga's Knit Closet, our sponsor, and this is one of her Halloween prints. This is one of her exclusive prints, and I have printed it on athletic knit. I don't think I'll actually be making a courtside dress out of this because I don't have enough for the maxi length. I suppose I could make a shorter length, but you should be seeing me sharing my make out of this very soon. I'm really excited to use that fabric. But anyways, back to our dress. Selvages down here and fold up here. This is the front skirt piece that you see that I've projected onto the fabric, and I have the fold line on the pattern piece right along the fold line of my fabric. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to either cut out or trace, if you want to trace the whole skirt first, this top curve and then the top small straight line of the skirt. And I'm just going to use this Crayola marker because I know it'll wash out, and hopefully that's a little bit darker line that you can see in the video what I've done. So I'm tracing that top curve and then this top small straight edge, which is the seam allowance. Okay, once I've either cut out or traced that, I can come down to this fold and measure down how much length I want to add to the skirt. Now, when I did my measurements, I measured that I wanted to add 28 inches. I was wearing the short version of the courtside dress, so I'm going to start from the shorter skirt line, and I'm going to measure down 28 inches, which is right here. I'll go ahead and put a clip there. So that little red clip indicates how long the dress is going to be at the front center. The next thing, if you notice, the side seam of the skirt is quite a bit higher than the front center. So we'll also want to measure down 28 inches from that side seam. Okay, and you just want to make sure that you come straight down, that you don't angle your line at all. Okay, I'm going to need to move over to the other side of my fabric. So once you've measured down 28 inches, you'll come straight across to the selvage edge of the fabric and you'll mark it. Put this pin here. Now that is going to be side seam bottom edge, and you'll see it's higher up than this front center. You need to maintain that height difference between the side seam and the center so that your skirt flat around the bottom. If you were to cut it straight line this way, your side seams would drag on the ground. So you want to make sure that you maintain that difference there. Now we'll create a temporary side seam, and this is where the optional twine comes in handy. You could just draw a line and then adjust it as necessary, but I don't want to have a bunch of extra lines to try and maneuver through. So what I'm going to do is take this piece of twine and I'm going to pull it so that it is a straight line from the outer edge of my side seam. So on the outside of this short straight line, and I'm going to make a straight line all the way down to that pin that I added for the bottom side seam. Now this is our new side seam for our maxi length dress. But before I actually draw or even cut that line, what I want to make sure of is that I have enough space in the skirt to accommodate my hips. Do you remember that second measurement that we took to find how far down our low hip is from the front center of the skirt? Mine was 8.5 inches. So you want to go right here at the front center where that fold is and measure down that amount. So I measured down 8.5 inches. Now I'll take my measuring tape and I'll hold it firmly in place right here at the fold. And then I'll just sort of move it like a dial up and down to find where the shortest measurement is, the shortest distance between the fold and my new side seam. And it looks like it's right about 12 inches. So that tells me that half of my front skirt has a width of 12 inches at around my low hip area. Double that to be 24 inches. That's gonna be how wide the front of my skirt is. Now, if I take that 24 inches and double it one more time to be 48 inches, that's how much width the skirt gives at my low hip area. My low hip measurement is about 36 inches. So 48 inches would be plenty of room. So therefore, I'm good to go. Follow the directions with me if you're good to go. If you need some additional hip space, continue following along to see what these procedures are, and then I'll give you some guidance on how to add additional hip width. If you just need a small amount of additional hip width, you can actually fudge your side seam line by making it not straight. Curve it outward at the top to give yourself a little bit of extra room at the top. This is actually what I did with my floral maxi length dress. As you see here, that side seam is bell-shaped. The only time you can really tell that it's a bell-shaped skirt is when I'm spinning or holding my skirt out to show what the shape of the side seam is. If you still need more additional room at the low hip, look for the section toward the end of this video called Cutting for More Hip Width. Now that we know that this line will work, we can go ahead and mark it. So we will draw a straight line from this outer edge. I can use my little string to help guide me. And we're gonna go all the way down to the clip that we put way at the beginning. And this is our new side seam of our skirt. Okay, so now we've marked the side seam. Now we need to mark the bottom curve. So you have this bottom side seam edge, and now we have this center edge. So all you need to do is draw a pretty little curve. You can bring your pattern piece down to help you draw your curve if you like, or you can just eyeball it. There. So now I have the bottom curve drawn, the new side seam, all the way up to that little notch area at the top and the center curve. Last thing you want to do is mark the notches. So we have a notch at the center, and then we have this notch here. What I'm going to do is measure how far down that notch is from the original. So that's about 8.5 inches. So I'll move over, and 8.5 inches, I'll mark the notch on my new pattern piece. And make sure to cut that out and label it. Now we have our new maxi length front skirt. Now that we have cut out our front skirt, we are ready to work on the back skirt. Here is the back skirt piece. We'll be ignoring that piece down there. I'm using my projector, as you can tell, so there's not a way I can really get rid of the other pieces with technological knowledge that I have. So we'll just ignore all of that and we'll focus in on this. So for the moment, we're gonna start exactly the same way that we did with the front skirt. We are going to trace this curve at the very top, or cut out if you want to go ahead and cut it out to start. So trace that right there, and then this straight edge as well. The front and back pieces are shaped differently. It is very important that you cut them out separately because of the way that the courtside dress is constructed. So that is going to stay intact. We're going to maintain this exactly the way it is. Again, we're going to need to change that side seam. The best way to do it for me is to take my front skirt piece that I've cut out and lay it on top, because I want the side seam of the back piece to match with the side seam of the front piece. So I'm going to line up these corners here. They are the very top corners of the side seam. So right on this outer long edge of both pieces, I'm going to line them up right at that corner. And then I'm going to spread out my skirt all the way. You will notice that your front skirt will have a little excess bulk and you'll end up with like some wrinkled edges there. Just spread out as much as you can, and you want to aim for the side seam being perfectly smooth along your fabric. All right, take your time, get it nice and spread out smoothly, get that bottom edge spread out smoothly. Then once you have your front skirt spread out to your liking, and I will show you, see there's a little excess right here, that's okay. Once you have it nice and spread out, you can trace this entire side seam and bottom curve. Once you've gotten it all traced, be sure to mark the notches. So there's the one on the side, and there's the one on this little straight edge here. Get those marked and labeled on your fabric. Okay, now we can remove this front skirt piece, and hopefully you can see curved, straight, long side seam all the way down, and then curved bottom. And there you have it. That's all you need to do. Cut this out and you are good to go. If you have done the initial steps and you found that you needed a little extra space where your low hip is, you can use this method in order to widen your skirt larger than it would be able to wide if you were cutting on the fold. Basically what we're going to do is open up the fabric along this edge where I have my front skirt piece fold line. Here's the fold line. This is going to be the selvage. So you can see when I flip over the fabric to look at the right side, here's the selvage. So right along here is the cut edge of the fabric. What we're going to do is cut our front and back pieces in half. So we're going to cut them right here at the fold line, and that way this side seam can come out further and allow for more space in the hip area. So what we're going to do, just like before, we're going to draw in the top small straight edge and the top curve, okay? And this time we're also going to draw in or cut along this fold line, but we want to make sure to give ourselves a seam allowance. So however much seam allowance you want to give, I'll give 3/8 of an inch because that's the seam allowance that is typical of Greenstyle patterns, and it'll be easy to remember. So I'm giving myself an additional 3/8 of an inch. You can see here's the fold line, and then I've drawn my cut line 3/8 of an inch outside of that fold line. Now in order to figure out the angle here, we're going to once again use our temporary side seam angle. You use the same method as before to figure out how long this center should be. We'll use the same method that we did before to figure out how wide we want to make this skirt. Okay, so here I'm making my temporary side seam, and I'll make it just as straight line as possible. I'll come and grab my measuring tape, and I will find 8.5 inches down from the center because that's how far down my low hip is. And then let's say my low hip was 60 inches. If my hip width is 60 inches, then I would want about 64 inches for the skirt in order to have 4 inches of ease around my hip. Divide your desired skirt hip width by 4 in order to get the measurement at this spot. So in this example, 64 inches divided by 4 is 16 inches. Looks like I got pretty close. It looks like here's about 16 1/4. So I can angle that in just a little bit more to make 16. Double check that. Measure 8.5 inches down. And then just swivel it. 16 right there. All right, so this line can be my new side seam, and it would give me plenty of 4 extra inches of ease at my low hip. I would draw this as my side seam. I would draw this as my center seam, and I'd cut them out. Then what you need to do is flip the pattern piece over, or if you're projecting, use the other side of the piece in order to come over here and cut your other front side. And you'll do the same exact thing for the back piece. And you'll use, just like we did on the earlier part of my video, you'll use the side seam and the bottom curve from your front pieces in order to create the side seam and the bottom curve on your back piece. Really the only difference being that you're opening up the fabric and cutting the pieces in two in order to make more space so that you can cut wider along the fabric. Thank you for joining me as I walked you through the steps of turning the courtside dress into a maxi length. I hope you found the instructions clear and were able to follow along easily. But if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again. I hope that you love your courtside maxi dress. I know I love mine, and I will see you soon. Happy sewing.